You have found your way to Patriot's Lament right here on KFAR. We are local talk radio. This is our Christmas edition. You got your blood flowing this morning, Josh?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Joining me in the studio here this morning from Bighorn Enterprises, we've got Josh Bennett, and from the Fairbanks chapter of the Campaign for Liberty, we've got Dave Giesel. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Steve.
All right. It's Christmas time. I had a very interesting email sent to me this week that I'd like to read to you. Can I read that?
Please.
All right. Jeff Berwick, at his wedding ceremony, said, quote, "Jesus seems like a pretty good guy. I like him because he was an anarchist." Truer words were never spoken. This week, the Christian world once again celebrates the birth of Jesus, the world's most famous anarchist. Yet, this was an anarchist is enough to cause many a church lady to leap from the altar. Could it be so? When Jesus was born, the world was not so different than the Western world today. Rome was the new world order of that era. Julius Caesar had crossed the Rubicon decades earlier, and Augustus Caesar had been emperor or dictator for almost 25 years. Rome had become a failing welfare state whose legions relied on exacting tribute from citizens in exchange for benefits in the form of social services. Rome had gone from a free republic to an empire while starting down a long path of debasing its currency, the world's known reserve currency. A once independent and alliance became self-indulgent, apathetic, and subject to the will of the dictators who called themselves fathers and the benefactors of the people. Rome did not conquer Israel, but was invited in to administer a dispute between two brothers over who should be king. Rome was the world police force of the day, and by appealing to Rome, Israel fell under the tribute of the Pax Romana excise tax and mutual obligations in exchange for Rome keeping the peace of a pending civil war. Under Pharisee and Roman influence, Israel had become a vast welfare state with people looking to the government to take care of them, as in the days under Egyptian and Babylonian captivity. People were committing the sin of coveting thy neighbor's goods while electing benefactors to provide for their needs under the Roman system of Korban. Long gone was the system of government set up under Moses that depended entirely of free will offerings to support the needy, distributed by a system of charitable ministers that served the welfare needs of the society. Jesus came along to lead his followers out of this ungodly Roman system, preaching an alternative form of government. He spoke of a jurisdiction outside of the Roman state, based on the perfect law of freedom, outside the tyranny of men who would rule over their brothers and neighbors. He unified the early Christian church in a system of charity for the rights of each other, requiring that each person love thy neighbor as thyself in a system of mutual, not governmental support. Jesus baptized people out of the welfare system established by the Romans and Pharisees and into the charitable system administered by the apostles. The Roman citizen ID stone that was part of their korban was replaced with a white stone from the Jordan River laid upon the altar, signifying the person's baptism into the free church society. The ministers of the early church were to be servants of the people and administer the free will offerings of the community. They were required to take a vow of poverty to ensure they didn't abuse their administrative privileges or siphon off the collective treasury. They took vows of celibacy to ensure they did not create heirs that could be entitled to the charitable contributions they ministered over. Jesus was showing a way to untangle people from the captivity of the social contracts they had made with the state of Rome and Judea and the tribute and obligations they had become snared by. He proclaimed to call no man father, as they called the Roman benefactors, but stated that thy Father art in heaven. The perfect law of freedom indicated that man's unalienable rights stemmed from God and nature and not governments of men. This was a system of anarchy by strict definition, without the complex system of tribute that led to the decadence and decline of society and the corruptible force of the state to back it up. The early Christian church was not persecuted for their belief in a different God or a kingdom in heaven, but for their opting out of the mutual taxation system and seeking to live apart from the kings and overlords, the gods many who demanded their tribute. Governments have no inalienable rights to rule over men. They obtain lawful authority through the consent of the governed. Understanding how that consent is obtained and granted is the key to understanding liberty and your own political status. Anarchy is merely that lack of imposed government and the seeking of your own independent jurisdiction. According to Brother Gregory Williams, the term republic actually stems from the pre-Caesar words libera res publica, free from things public, that is, heavy government. Starting with Augustus, they dropped that free part. Having created his government-less society, Jesus took on the Pharisees, essentially a political party at the time, who had passed an ordinance requiring the temple tax be paid or face the judgment of a civil magistrate or the Judean government. These taxes flowed into the government's treasury within the temple, whether it served the people or not. The central treasury that held the government funds could be abused by a greedy population or a corrupt bureaucracy. The money changers required the temple tax to be paid in the denarii and took their commission out of the currency conversion for the people to worship. When Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, he was really threatening the powerful elite's ungodly way of life. This final insult could no longer be tolerated. When brought before Pilate, Jesus declared, "My kingdom is not of this world." The word world was written cosmos in the original Greek, which is defined as orderly arrangement, order, or government. What Jesus was really saying was that his kingdom on this earth was not a part of the government of Rome, and explicitly not within their jurisdiction to rule over him. And Pilate generally agreed that he had no jurisdiction over Jesus' kingdom of non-government. Jesus had taken the kingdom from those who would suppress and subject the people in sloth and servitude, and entrusted it to his loyal followers who were leaders in a kingdom that set men free in spirit and in truth. Anarchy indeed. The Pharisees appealed to Rome to get rid of Jesus, but Jesus would not appeal to Rome for protection. Had he appealed to Rome, he would have compromised the sovereignty of his kingdom on earth. Today, most of us find ourselves under a slothful tribute to an emperor and a system that is not for our benefit. We have coveted our neighbor's goods in a vain pursuit of free health care, education, welfare, unemployment benefits, Social Security, and government protection. We've traded our inalienable God-given rights through social contracts, both implied and explicit. Our churches are not ordained by God, but are 501c3 corporations granted status by the state. As we head into Christmas and into what is certainly going to be a volatile 2012, we're going to need to dig down deep and find that anarchist in all of us, with a little more loving thy neighbor as thyself to boot. Merry Christmas. What do you guys think of that? You got a smile on your face, Dave.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. I was pretty happy to see that get posted up on Dollar Vigilante yesterday.
You know, it seems to me just that the concept of looking at Jesus as an anarchist is one of those issues that is, it's bound to drive some people absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it threatens their real religion of statism.
It's a lack of understanding of terms, too. I mean, it's really important to define your terms and not have someone else define them. When you do, you set yourself up to have to follow what they say what is what, and then you're stuck.
Well, it's interesting, too. I mean, if you look at Jesus as an anarchist, he wasn't calling his leaders to violence at all. In fact,
quite the opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, people who equate anarchism with violence, I think, are deceived by whoever it is that is in control of the terms. And, I mean, how often do you hear anarchism and anarchists being linked to violent acts.
Certainly, whenever the state uses the term.
Well, absolutely. And you look at history, and the people who have assassinated our presidents. You've got the anarchist that assassinated William McKinley. You've got the anarchist that assassinated James Garfield. You've got these, Sacco and Vincenti, weren't they anarchists too?
Yeah, it's just to basically it's just the state letting you know that you need them.
Yeah.
Because outside of having that government, this is what happens. Presidents get shot.
Yeah.
Of course, if there were no presidents, they
Yeah, Jesus was basically the prototype for nonviolent civil disobedience. And I would argue that the movement that he started and followed through on basically had far more impact than any sort of violent revolution ever in the history of the world.
Ever. Absolutely.
And then if you want to talk about probably the second biggest revolution in the world, I would have to say, and I've blogged about this on the website, probably Gandhi's nonviolent civil disobedience, evicting the British Empire, which is the largest empire in the entire world to that point in time, from the Indian subcontinent. Much, much bigger deal than the little thing that happened here in 1776 on the scale of it.
No, you look at just in terms of the number of people affected and the large. I mean, you look at it's not just India, what became Pakistan.
It was the whole subcontinent,
Bangalore,
right? It was considered the crown or the jewel in the empire's crown.
Mm-hmm. And once again, that was not through violent revolution. It wasn't through planting bombs. It wasn't through threatening to kill people. It wasn't making a list of killing 2 people for every one that was arrested. It was all it was all non-violent, non-compliance.
Yep, it was just saying no.
Just saying no. All right, Merry Christmas, guys. We got somebody on the phones already. Is there something else we want to do before we go to the phones?
No.
All right, 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
This is Randy.
Good morning, Randy. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and all of you. I called last week on December 17th about the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which is an anti-discrimination measure, a bill, not yet law, protecting homosexuals in the private workplace. And by the way, there are many subjects concerning anti-discrimination laws, and that's the one I had brought up. And you, Steve, brought up a different subject concerning anti-discrimination, which is fine. But anyway, that's the one I had brought up. But anyway, there's another subject in anti-discrimination law called the Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which protects people over 40 from being discriminated against in the private workplace. And I've brought this subject up before on this program. But that particular law is a law. It's not just a bill like the homosexual one has been a bill since about 1994, and it still has not become law yet. But anyway, on that Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which I do oppose, I was wondering, Steve, this is a question for you. If someone opposes that act, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, does it mean that they are in favor of discriminating against old people, maybe?
That's a good question, because I don't think you necessarily are in favor of discrimination. However, if you are opposing the implementation of it, you are in a sense agreeing with discrimination. You are saying that you have a right to discriminate. And this is an interesting part, Randy, because you and I have kind of gone round and round, because on a lot of the points that you make when it comes to, for instance, the issue of non-discrimination, you have taken a position that is actually very close to what I believe in terms of private individuals being able to decide for themselves who they're going to hire, who they're going to keep employed, and who they're going to serve, and that it's the marketplace that's going to determine whether or not they're successful. So it's something that Josh said too last week, that if somebody puts out a sign in front of their business that says no blacks allowed, how long is that business going to stay in business? It will eventually fail. It's just a matter of now, because the government has stepped in and said thou shalt not discriminate, by putting up a sign that says no blacks allowed, you are identifying yourself as a racist, as well as whether you're going to discriminate against those who are old or whatever else. I'm not going to give you permission to do so, Randy. I'm not going to let you rope me into that. But I will say this, that if you are truly employing a person based on their ability to do their job, then you're going to have documentation when you fire them that will show that they are not doing their job and that you're not firing them because they're old. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes good sense. And on the Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act, which I said I'm against, it protects me because I'm 56 years old, way above 40 years old. And so I am against discriminating against old people. I'm against employers discriminating against me. And I, by the way, right at this moment am unemployed and would like to have a job, by the way, but I'll get one pretty soon. But anyway, so the reason I am against the Federal Age Discrimination in Employment Act is not because I'm in favor of discriminating against anyone, and I'm against discriminating against anyone on any basis. But the reason is because I value freedom so highly. I think freedom is so important. Liberty is so vital to the success of this multi group that we have in this country here, that it should be preserved at all costs, in my opinion. And along with the fact that I'm opposed to any kind of discrimination, I have no problem with a government agency who monitors discrimination, who is supported by tax money, which is extracted from people at gunpoint, and to use that tax money to support an agency that monitors levels of discrimination, takes complaints, and sends admonishing letters to people that do discriminate, and prints on a website companies, for instance, that practice discrimination and to what level they do, to give them a black eye. But I'm against crossing the line of actually forcing them to hire certain people or to not fire certain people or whatever, because that crosses the line. In other words, I'm in favor of the government being able to do what any private citizen can do. Like you and I could make a little club.
Can I hang on?
Yeah, I knew there was a lot coming.
No, we just had to give you enough rope. Now we get to tug on it.
Sure.
So you're against the government forcing a business not to discriminate.
Yes.
But you're okay with the government pointing a gun at that business's employees to fund its little defamation project.
A necessary evil.
Actually, it's not.
That's,
and what's interesting,
that's beautiful.
I'm going to just really quick. I'll let you back in.
Have at it.
Do you realize the government actually is discriminating when it's going out with their gun collecting those taxes, because they don't collect them from everyone. They discriminate who they take them from.
Well, they're
right?
taking them from everyone who produces wealth. You know, if they take
so they're discriminating. So if you don't do anything, if you don't contribute to society in any productive way, which is what wealth production is, then they leave you alone. They only point a gun at you if you're actually contributing something. Doesn't that seem like a reverse incentive structure?
Well, no, because you can still keep 90% of what you produce, and that's enough incentive.
Well, I don't know what tax structure you're belonging to, because it ain't sure the heck ain't no 90% that you get to keep.
Well, depending what income bracket you're in.
And it hardly even matters that. You still get a lot taken from you. I mean, if you've got an employer, your employer matches and pays more than what you actually pay. I mean,
yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, how can you agree with me when you just said that it's okay to take a gun and take money from people and give these... Randy, you were right on the money all the way up until you got there. The private industry, the public sector, the private sector will take care of those people that are, quote unquote, discriminating. How can you say that you...
Well,
don't you believe in the First Amendment? Don't you have freedom of speech, freedom of thought?
Yeah, but what I was thinking is you and Dave there, if you see some company if you see some restaurant or something discriminating against people because they parked their hair on the wrong side or whatever, you as private citizens have a right to put up a website and accurately and truthfully post to let other people know that, hey, these people discriminate against people who park their hair on the right side.
Yeah, it's free speech.
Yeah, that's free speech.
Why do you need the government to do it?
Well, the government has these extra resources, and they can kind of get the message out.
Where do they get the resources from, Randy?
Pointing a gun at people's heads.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
All right. Well, God bless you, brother. Merry Christmas. But we're gonna move on.
Intel discriminates by age, not explicitly, but sort of implicitly. If you're over the age of, I don't know, it's like 35 or something like that, it's very difficult to get hired by them because they're in a very fast-moving technological field. And so even if you're technically competent, they want people with new ideas coming in. And they actually have a rule, I'm not going to get it exactly right because I don't have the Wikipedia page up, but they have a rule for their board members where their board members can't be over a certain age. So even their board members and executives can't run the company if they're over a certain age, and everybody who gets involved in the company knows that ahead of time. So I don't see any problem with that. But if you're against age discrimination, then you better not buy any Intel products anymore.
Right.
But that'll leave you out in the wilderness technologically.
Well, and even if you look at these laws that were passed by the federal government to ensure non-discrimination, in so many cases it was the local governments and it was the force of law that was forcing the discrimination in the first place. Where did the segregation come from in the South?
Yeah, no, the Jim Crow laws. The bus that Rosa Parks refused to go to the back of was a government bus. Had there not been a government monopoly on public transit in that town, had the town allowed permitting of a bus company run by black people, maybe she wouldn't have had that problem.
Or if you didn't have to have a permit to have a bus company, she wouldn't have had that problem.
But it was a government bus that she was that she refused to go to the back of.
And I think that's a great analogy right there for all of us, and because in a sense we're all on the government bus as long as we're participating in this system of taxation and of elections and of everything else that has to do with our current system of government. People get so freaked out when you start talking about not participating in elections.
Oh yeah.
You have a duty.
Yeah.
You have a duty to go out there and vote for either of these two bad choices.
To protect your freedom.
To protect your freedom, you must choose the less of the two evils.
Again, back to Jesus. We all remember that part of the Bible where he talked about actively participating in the Roman form of government. Remember that was part of the Great Commission? Go forth and make politicians of
all men.
Well, the one thing I do remember about Jesus saying about the government system had to do with the government money, in which he said, "Render under Caesar what is Caesar's."
Yeah.
And you look at what they were talking about was the coins that they were using to pay their taxes with, coins issued by the government of the day. And which, again, it's like we opened the show with. The Roman Empire was already failing. The monetary system, the reserve currency of the day, which everybody was using, even non-Roman citizens were using the Roman currency as their way of exchange. It was already being degraded.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that case, they are actually shaving off little bits of the gold and silver, making the coins a little bit smaller.
Well, just like the story with the tax, when the Pharisees asked the disciples, "Does your master pay the temple tax?" And they're like, "Of course we do." And later Jesus admonished them. He's like, "Shut your mouth." And he didn't pay the tax. I mean, that's one thing people miss because they say, "Well, he did pay it." No, he didn't. He sent his disciple out, caught a fish, pulled a coin out of the fish's mouth, and that paid the tax. Never came out of his pocket. And we know that they had money because Judas was their treasurer. He was a greedy slob, so they had money they could have paid it with.
And that's not to say that all people who handle money are automatically greedy slobs.
No, he was pointed out to be one.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those interesting aspects of. Can you imagine being in a group of 12 guys, and the one who's in charge of the money, you know he's dipping into it. But it's like, well, how do you deal with that? It's like you go to the guy who's in charge and say, "Hey, man."
Well, how many guys we got in Washington? And we know they're all.
It's not 1 out of 12. If it were 1 out of 12, we'd be doing pretty good.
They're all.
It's about easier to identify who it is dipping in and saying, "Hey, that's why don't we unelect so and so."
Yeah, it's actually the reverse. It's maybe 1 or 2 that aren't dipping in out of hundreds.
Well, and I mean, there's just an article that just came out this week about Begich and how he was promising during the campaign that he was going to have a more transparent yada yada yada, and he was going to make sure that he was running a more transparent form of government when he got to Washington. Well, now that the figures came out and they're like, how transparent is this? We'll be right back. More on the way.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. GOP presidential hopefuls Newt Gingrich and Rick Perry suffering setbacks in Virginia.
The state Republican Party announcing that both failed to meet the minimum requirements to appear on the March 6th ballot. Gingrich says he's the victim of a failed system. Perry's campaign says it may appeal. Names that will be on the ballot: Mitt Romney and Ron Paul.
Fox Radio's Ron Flatter. Gingrich had wanted to mount a write-in campaign, but a University of Virginia law professor says when it comes to primary elections, the state law says no write-ins are permitted. And the scramble is on for last-minute gifts. Those shoppers not alone.
The National Retail Federation tells us that half of Americans wait until this week right here to finish all of that shopping.
Fox's Casey Stiegel. The National Retail Federation believes more people are opening their wallets this holiday than last in the face of pent-up demand and improved job numbers. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Economic issues, the price of a gallon of gas, the bailouts on Wall Street. Talk about it on 660 AM.
Welcome back to Patriots Lament right here on KFAR. We are local talk radio online at KFAR660.com. I'm Steve Floyd, the monkey behind the machine. This is our Christmas edition of Patriots Lament. Joining me across the board to my right is Dave Giesel from the Fairbanks Campaign for Liberty, and to my left, Josh Bennett from Bighorn Enterprises, one of the sponsors of the show. Gentlemen, welcome back. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas,
Merry
Steve.
Christmas.
Thank you very much. You know, what is it that makes Christmas merry? You ever thought about that? I'm getting dumb looks on
Time
both
off
of
from
you.
work and alcohol.
No, is that-
I'm trying to. I was waiting for if there was a catch.
Oh, I'm
that
just
one.
just
Didn't know if
thinking
you were
about
throwing
it.
bait out ready to hook.
I'm throwing some chum into the water. It's not bait. I just want to see the water froth a bit. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Well,
I mean,
Steve, individually, all of us are that Christmas spirit.
oh wow. Okay, Father Christmas over there. One of the main issues that we focus here on this program has got to be, and always is, the issue of liberty, individual liberty, and collective liberty. Where does the collective liberty come in? If a nation has lost its individual rights, can that nation said to be a free nation at all?
No.
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 I mean, you can say whatever you want, but
We're free all day long.
The North Koreans think that they're a free country. The people that live in North Korea think that they are a free country.
Yep.
And we think that we are a free country here in the United States. But I would contend that we are not free.
Yeah. Josh and I had this discussion earlier in the week. It was, of course, the same with the Germans in the late 30s.
Yeah.
There's a book. They thought they were free, and this guy goes through all these quotes and experiences that people there had, where there was like an obvious contradiction between what they were saying and what they believed and what reality was. But even up during the war, people didn't acknowledge it.
Well, and the war itself, it was being fought for the rights of the German people.
Right.
It was the
Absolutely.
It was the fatherland. It was the homeland.
Yeah.
We're fighting this war on behalf of the homeland.
Yeah.
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 Which is one of the things that really, really, really disturbed me when I saw the Homeland Security being formed in the United States.
I was trying to pull up some Orwell quotes on language earlier, but I failed. But no, that's exactly what it is: destruction of the language and changing of the meaning of the words. Even patriotism doesn't mean dissent against the status quo anymore. It means, falling over yourself to, on the altar of the state,
worship the state.
Yeah. How can I give you more than just my life? So, yeah.
How can I give you more than just my life? Wow.
Right.
That's exactly what patriotism means today, isn't it?
That's what it means today.
If you're not a true patriot, you're not willing. Oh, you have not proclaimed loyalty to the state today, Josh.
Yeah. And thus we have the public education system, which is why we have that. They take, was it Nathaniel Hale?
Yeah. Nathan Hale. Uh-huh.
Nathan Hale?
No.
With,
Give me liberty or give me death? Is he the one you're talking about?
No, that's Patrick
that's
Henry.
Patrick
I'm sorry.
I regret that I have
but one life to give.
to my country.
Thank you. Sorry.
We like
I'm
to teach
ashamed.
that
I hang
now,
my head
without
no context.
without the context to it. Yeah. He was not...
It wasn't one life to give to my government.
Yeah.
But that distinction is no longer
It was to
made.
the people that he was involved with.
Yeah.
It was to the theory and the thought of liberty. He regretted that he only had one life to give for liberty.
And what was it that Nathan Hale was arrested for? He was a spy, right? He had
supposedly, yeah, he had some papers.
He had papers on him that implicated the rebels against the crown.
Yeah.
Well,
Strung him up.
458 Talk is the number. Good morning, caller. Merry Christmas. Who's this?
Lisa.
Good morning, Lisa.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. We're celebrating the birth of Jesus, and which reminds us that God, or Logos, was made flesh and came to the earth to show us how we're supposed to live. And you're talking about perversion of the language. It's like perversion, the false religions pervert the true religion, and Jesus told us to occupy until he comes and to be the head and not the tail. And so we're supposed to be the real occupiers. And then whenever you see in the Bible something repeated 3 times, that's kind of like God's exclamation point. And in John 21, it's Peter saying, God's asking, do you love me? And Peter says, I am your friend. And then Jesus says, then feed my lambs. And Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of God, do you really love me? Yes, Lord, I'm your friend. Then take care of my sheep. And then once more he asked, Simon, son of John, are you even my friend? And Peter was grieved at the way Jesus asked the question this 3rd time. Lord, you know my heart, I am. He said, Jesus said, then feed my little sheep. And when you were young, you were able to do as you liked and go wherever you wanted to. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and others will direct you and take you where you don't want to go. So anyway, freedom is riding easy in harness to the Lord's perfect will, not just what we want to do. And certain parties don't acknowledge that our rights are not just because we're human, but they're from God. Because if you lived in Russia, the Politburo would say, oh, you have rights? You think you have rights? We're here in a compact of the elite Politburo to say you don't have those rights. So it's only a society that acknowledges that the rights are from God and acknowledges God in all his and mores and morals, that a people can be an exceptional people because they have an exceptional government, as the founders created, in recognizing that with exceptional people who are doing God's will, we can have the most freedom, the ultimate free government.
Lisa, God bless you. You had me right up until the point when you said exceptional government, because it is not.
Well, that's because it's from the bottom up and not the top down, and we're supposed to govern ourselves, and that's
the myth.
Locally,
that's the myth, is that it's from the bottom up. We actually challenge our listeners. Can you do this?
I'll bring her down. Go ahead.
We actually challenged our listeners a couple weeks ago to call their representatives and call the governor and find out if this actually is a bottom-up government, in which case the governor would be able to tell federal agents what they can and cannot do in this state. For example, TSA. He could instruct them not to violate the Fourth Amendment. And the response we got was a very resounding silence. And no one has answered my question, which is who has jurisdiction in the state. When someone here, any caller or person who reads the blog or anything, can get anyone in the state government to say that the state government has jurisdiction over the federal government in this state, I would love to hear it. I'm actually thinking about making a monetary reward for the first person who can give that to me in writing, because it's a myth. It's not true. And the longer you believe the myth, the worse things get without you realizing.
So what does the 10th Amendment mean?
It doesn't mean anything now.
Thank you.
It means nothing.
Well, but on that same line, then, what are any of the amendments to the Constitution?
Nothing.
Exactly. Paul, God bless you, and Merry Christmas. 458 Talk is the number. Good morning. Who's this?
Good morning. This is Al. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Al. Merry Christmas.
Al.
Hey, I stepped out of this cubicle and went on a couple public forums and was asking questions and debating about our rights. And I was just dismayed at, and this was Alaskan forums, approximately 8 out of 10 people are sheeple. I mean, you start laying anything about rights down and they don't comprehend it.
Maybe 9 out of 10. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt with the 8.
Yeah.
For sure.
But it was just fascinating listening to people or talking to people on there. That's just the way it is, and what about this organization, or what about this business? They have to do it. Why shouldn't you have to do it?
That's perfect. I had a discussion with a friend of mine yesterday, and they were saying that the way that the government is run these days, and in particular the more local government, is we don't have rights in the way that you understand them, Al. What we have are what my friend called rules for the playground.
Oh, perfect.
And so the government views everything that is, everything that's in the public domain, which is our stuff too, because they tax our property, as a playground. And we're like elementary school kids. And there's rules listed, no running on the playground, no this, no that. You can do this, you can't do that. And we have rights as far as we obey the playground rules, right? And the fact that the people making the rules are just like you or me isn't supposed to matter. We're supposed to still treat them as a teacher, and we're supposed to be little children and just go along with it.
Don't mess up the grass.
Don't ruin the grass. That's against the playground rules, Josh.
No camping in the park.
Something else that was what I was trying to point out and explain, and they were just I guess either were hard-headed or just couldn't grasp the concept is here you have a right currently today. I have the right to refuse an officer from coming in here inspecting without a warrant.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I lose that right?
By trying to exercise it. That short answer. When's the last time you tried to prevent somebody who didn't have a warrant from coming into your house?
In reality, this whole taxidermy proposal on creating log books and having the authority to come in and inspect them and so on did result from a taxidermist exercising his right to say, no, I'm not going to comply. You need to find a warrant and have a nice day.
Right, so they just changed the rules.
So now they go to an entity, a commission, a board, and say, now give us that authority.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, change the rules. It goes back to the fallacy Dave and I were talking about the other day of we are not free. American people have the worst thing that the American people think today is that they're free. And that's the biggest thing that's enslaving them is their thought that they're free.
To raise a simpler question with our legislatures, you should ask them, who has jurisdiction over our laws?
Yeah, we did. Dave absolutely has asked.
But break it down to a local level and say, okay, this board that you created can make regulations. Aren't you supposed to oversee them and not make sure they're stepping out of line?
Oh, even their own laws.
Their own laws.
Even their own laws. That would be. That's an even more basic question. Oh man. I'm afraid that has the same answer as the question I asked.
Cricket.
But that's a different angle on that. That's an interesting one. Maybe I'll run that by some people.
Al, by the way, I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on this. If somebody comes to your house and doesn't have a warrant for your own safety, don't refuse them. Okay? Because
have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
At least make sure we're on air so you can call in.
Yeah, exactly. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Who's this?
Good morning, Frank Kearney here.
Merry Christmas, Frank.
I just want to say Merry Christmas to all. I want to make it short. My neighbor said to me, Happy Holiday, Frank. I don't want to attend you with no Merry Christmas. I said, wow. Well, thank you. Happy Holiday to you. If you look up the origins of holiday, it goes back to Holy Day. Have a good day.
Thank you. Happy holy days to you, too. 458-TALK is the number. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Patriot's Lament. Who's this?
This is Brian.
Brian, good morning.
You guys are talking about freedom and the state and so forth, and I remember, I think you, Steve, read the story the other day about the stateless ship.
I'm not sure.
Like sea
stegging
or what?
A ship that was out fishing.
I
believe it was in the Bering Sea somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. The so-called pirate ship. It didn't have an assigned state. Yeah.
Good on them.
Yeah, and boy, they sure jumped on. The United States government sure jumped on new legislation. They put that to an end where they were out there, living free on the ocean catching fish.
Confiscated their entire catch.
Yeah, and they want to come into an American port and sell it, but because they don't bow down and partake of or participate in some state somewhere, they're going to make it illegal for those guys to sell their fish.
Because they're not paying tribute to anyone.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to.
That's exactly right. And but when you guys started talking about tribute and Caesar and all that kind of stuff and the state, that story popped up in the back of my brain, and I just thought that's a perfect example of how someone stands up to this all-powerful, omnipotent state, and they just, they put the whammy on you.
They are crushed, ground into the earth.
Interesting, because it's not even that they weren't an American ship. It's just that they didn't fly any flag.
They were pirates.
Like their crime was not participating in a mafia organization that claims a monopoly of force in some jurisdiction. And that was their crime.
And baggage even got legislation passed so that we could now use their boat as target practice from the Coast Guard.
Oh, man.
I just think that's interesting. For probably 25 to 30 years, I've always been fascinated with the concept of finding a piece of real estate somewhere in the world that wasn't claimed by a state.
Mm-hmm.
There is none. There are a few little tiny islands that are, about as big as your car. But I have studied the CIA World Fact Book. I've surfed Google Earth for years. The only place that comes close is Western Sahara.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of sand.
Who is John Galt?
Have you looked at the Seasteading Project?
Nope.
It'd be worth checking out. It's it's not David Friedman, it's his kid. It's Milton Friedman's grandkid that kind of came up with this idea that you have these really large platforms, like bigger than an oil platform, and you can actually make them like totally self-sufficient. And then they would have multiple jurisdictions flags, and they'd fly whatever benefits them at the time. But basically, they would just stay on the seas and fly a flag just for the sake of it. But it would basically be a free platform, like a free society that you would join, where there'd be a few thousand people who live on each one, and you would just do all your trade and everything on the seas. And then if they ever came into port, they'd fly whatever flag they need to dock and do that. But that project is actually sort of moving forward. There's actually been some funding for that.
And if anybody has ever read Atlas Shrugged,
right.
That is exactly what John Galt did.
Yeah, only in Colorado.
Right. Well, no, that was. I mean, in the book it was in Colorado, but in this case, it's actually happening. It's happening in the high seas.
Yeah, at least people are thinking that, because they've made the same discovery you had, which is there's no place on land you can go. But
it's not a new concept. Back before the Dark Ages, that was fairly common in many places around the world, where people would actually walk out, and there was laws or exceptions in certain places. Germany, on the Bodensee, for example, those people built there was a group of people who built their houses on stilts out in the lake.
Oh, okay.
Because it removed them from the jurisdiction of the local government.
We can bring it back home, too, and that's how the West was settled. They were leaving. They were getting away from all that.
Yeah.
They were getting away from the Washington government, getting away from the states. They were moving to freedom, which, unfortunately, we filled it all up and all decided we needed to be part of those states.
And even in those cases that you were referring to, like back during the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, the entire known world was still claimed by somebody.
Yeah. Well, that was why I think that's one of the things that drove so many of the explorers like LaSalle and Schoolcraft and these guys that went through North America. It was an intriguing idea to be able to go somewhere where there was no oppressive rule, or any rule for that matter
Look at Antarctica now too. I mean, Antarctica has just different jurisdictions under different flags. The moon.
Well, yeah, I was going to say the moon. The moon was in pretty good shape until the space program. Now it's got all these flags jabbed in it.
Hey, brother, thanks for the call. Merry Christmas. 458 Talk is the number. Good morning. Welcome to Patriots Lament. Who's this?
Hey, it's Carl.
Hey, good morning, Carl.
Hey, it's a sad state of our nation when we're drifting off to like a military takeover. I mean, where people are going to get rounded up by the military without any checks and balances. I think that's really disgraceful, and to see that most of our senators voted for this act. You know,
it was only 93%.
Yeah, that's right. There were 7 who said no.
Yeah. And the other thing is oh boy, you know, laws like words and definitions can be taken by different people different ways, opposite sometimes the most extreme. And the word patriot, by the English definition, I think it was a word that the English actually called the American rebels who were writing. They were terrorists. They were labeled terrorists, and that means this is a terrorist lament show.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think we're already on enough lists, Carl, without you adding that to it. Thank you, though. I appreciate the phone call. Merry Christmas.
We will disavow that one.
All right.
We appreciate the sentiment.
You know, it's interesting to me. You know, by what right do we broadcast this show? Who has given us permission to do this?
No, the FCC.
You know, that's exactly right. And at any moment, they could revoke the permission for this radio station being on the air.
Which would be fabulous.
Oh, fabulous how? Because
I think it'd be great.
It'd be another wake up call.
Yeah.
Well, I like how many do we need, Dave? I mean, we've been
apparently
the American.
More. We're still here, right?
The American society has been hitting the snooze button so long with all the wake-up calls that have been coming in. I think that we're past sleeping in. I think we might be dead.
I like going back to the Indefinite Detention Act. How Murkowski justified her vote for that, and it's really interesting. You got to really parcel out what she says, because words mean things, and I like the one section in there where she said, you know, if you're a good, law-abiding... The whole thing she goes through is like, oh, well, this isn't really going to affect you. This isn't really going to affect you. And she says, well, if you're a good, law-abiding citizen at the grocery store, you're not just going to get picked up. But the whole point of it is, if you're not a good, law-abiding citizen, wouldn't that mean you are going to get picked up?
And who decides whether you're a good, law-abiding citizen if they keep passing laws that make you a criminal?
You don't get your supposed rights anymore because they just hold you. I mean, she never did come out and say that, I don't think. When they hold you, your 4th, 5th, 6th Amendments are gone, right? She never justified that. I mean, she did try, but basically it just came down to what we get over and over and over. Well, if you're a good citizen, what do you have to hide? If you're a good citizen, you don't need to worry about all these laws we're making. But we know from this show the way that the government gets more powers is to create more criminals. When everyone's a criminal, everyone's under their jurisdiction. When everyone's a criminal, everyone gets to be hauled in.
Yeah, Ayn Rand had a quote about that. She said the only power a government has is to go after criminals. And so in order to increase its power, it has to increase the number of criminals. And then just by changing law, not on some overriding principle. And then it can create more criminals and thus have more power.
Which goes back to the very thing that we started the show today, you know, it being Christmas and all, and Jesus Christ as a kind of an archetype of anarchist, as someone who came in preaching freedom from the law.
Crimes against the state.
Well, except for the part where he said, unless they don't believe you, then kill them.
Right. Wait, did Jesus say that?
No.
I don't think he did.
Well, a lot of people call in here and defend that position.
I've heard that. I just haven't gotten the reference for it yet.
Yeah.
No, it's in, First Steve 2 or something?
I thought it was Second Lisa.
Oh, God bless you. All right. We've got just about 5 minutes left in the show here today, and one of the other things you had wanted to play today was some Charlie Brown.
Oh, yeah. One of the, we like to give out a lot of different people to read, Murray Rothbard, anything for the Mises Institute. I like reading John Locke and some things older. And one of the most profound writers of our time is Charles Schulz, I believe.
All right.
And I would encourage everyone to read his books. That You're a Blockhead, Charlie Brown. He's Your Dog, Charlie Brown. There's a lot of good meaning in those books. And one of my favorite, actually, two of my very most favorite programs, TV shows, movies, whatever, is It's a Wonderful Life, which we watched last night. Fantastic movie. If you haven't watched it, you need to. And the other one is Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown.
And here it is from Merry Christmas, Charlie Brown.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about? Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
Linus is walking across the stage.
Lights, please. And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them. And the glory of the Lord shone round about them. And they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not. For behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. Ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God, and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
Linus is picking up his blanket and walking back across the stage. Over to Charlie Brown.
That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
Charlie Brown's lifting up that famous Christmas tree. It looks like most of the trees around Fairbanks, as a matter of fact.
Black spruce.
Yeah.
Walking outside.
Behold, I bring you tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you.
He's looking at the stars. All right, there you go. The meaning of Christmas.
Is what Christmas is all about.
There's so many things from the Christmas story. There's census non-compliance.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There's
taxation.
There's fourth trimester forced abortion that the state mandated, right? Because that was the reason for. Yeah. That was the reason is they wanted to. That's why they were staying there and left for Egypt afterwards.
Right.
So many great laws to be obeyed that were disobeyed, and that's what the whole story. Well, that's part of what the whole story is about.
Even the Magi, they came in from the east, and
that's right.
They were warned in a dream, and they didn't comply with the king's wishes to come and tell them where the baby was.
Right. Yep. Disobedience.
So here's a great action point for Christmas. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. How about this? You get your family together and you read the Christmas account out of Luke 2.
Yeah, that's good. I think it goes to what we say here a lot, over and over. There is a higher law. And the Christmas story tells that. Yeah. There is a higher law than
the state.
They are not God.
No. Well, there you have it. Merry Christmas, Josh.
Merry Christmas, Steve and Dave.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Josh.
Dave.
Merry Christmas, Steve.
All right,
people hopefully can. We like to talk about the doom and gloom a lot here, but maybe spend at least one whole day thinking about some good things. Your family.
Exactly, and the true meaning of Christmas, which is anarchism.
That's right.
All right, thanks for being here, guys. We'll see you again next week for another edition of Patriots Lament. And coming up next, we've got a special pre-heard edition of Health Talk. We're not going to call it a rerun. We're going to call it a pre-heard edition. After that, Dave Ramsey and more, and I will see you again on Monday morning for the Better Breakfast Show. Remember to check us out online. Dave, what's the Patriots Lament website?
patriotslament.blogspot.com.
And do we have a YouTube channel?
Yeah, YouTube channel is Radio Free Fairbanks.
And an email?
patriotslament@gmail.com.
All right, that sounds perfect. We'll see you next week right here on KFAR Local Talk Radio.